Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed Imtiaz Fazel as the country's Inspector General for Intelligence for a period of 5 years, effective from the 1st of November. That's tomorrow. This comes after the National Assembly approved Fazel's nomination for the post following a public process in which 25 people had applied for the position. 12 were interviewed by the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. His appointment also comes on the back of on the back of a terror alert issued last week by the U.S. Embassy. The presidency says Fazel's appointment is a continuation of the attention that President Cyril Ramaphosa is giving to strengthening the capability of the state, including the security sector. Let's talk more about this now with Thami Nkosi, who's an independent intelligence analyst. Thami, a very good afternoon to you. I'm grateful for your time. How significant is this appointment, especially when you consider that the man appointed now had been already in this office specifically?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. Thank you for having us. This couldn't have come at an untimely time. The truth of the matter is that we've gone 7 months after the previous Inspector General of Intelligence contract ended in February. So in truth, it's taken a long time, but it's a welcome development, and it's a good thing that Mr. Fazel is actually part of the fiber. By that, I mean he's been around at least the intelligence community since 2002. Which is pretty good. So we're hoping that this is the beginning of a process that's going to actually be guaranteeing us that there will be oversight of the intelligence community.
And just on that point about oversight, the Inspector General for Intelligence, of course, monitors and reviews operations in the intelligence services. It's much broader than what I've now summed up there. It also comes, as I was referencing there, last week we had a terror alert issued by the United States Embassy. We've had very public lapses in the intelligence service response, for example, in getting ahead of the unrest last July. So what should be his main priorities, do you think, coming into the post?
I think one of the priorities, absolutely, the incidences that you actually mentioned have been an indictment on us. And an indictment on the government insofar as being able to, kind of perform the duties that they're supposed to perform at the State Security Agency. I'm hoping that the new Inspector General of Intelligence would, one, ensure that there is recourse and repatriation for all the civil society organizations that have been infiltrated by the State Security Agency during the Zuma years. So that's the first thing on the table, and I'm hoping civil society organizations are actually going to launch complaints regarding that, and that will be the first thing to do to ensure that there is recourse there and there is justice that's done and the spies are named. The second one would be to fight for the independence. I mean, some of you would know in the media that Cyril Ramaphosa during the State Capture Commission had raised questions and concerns about the independence of the Inspector General's office, given that is actually stationed within the State Security Agency in itself. So that has been one of the major pushbacks that should be at the forefront of the IGI to ensure that that office is as independent as possible. And the other thing would be to ensure that they play an oversight role not only of the State Security Agency, but also crime intelligence and military intelligence and financial intelligence. And I think there is very little knowledge insofar as the mandate of the IGI is concerned in the general public. So those would be the two tasks. One, ensure the independence of the office. Secondly, ensure that there is accountability for all the abuses of the State Security Agency, given the high-level panel review, given the state capture report, given the three people's panel that actually investigated the July unrest. So in essence,
pardon me, Thami, do you think then that the challenges which he's going to face, shall I say, and the threats to the country's intelligence services are more internal than external? I'll explain. It's more of a crisis when you look at potential political interference and abuse of the services versus an external threat such as a terror alert, for instance.
Absolutely. I mean, like I'm saying, all those three reports that we're sitting with point to the fact that there's a defect within the State Security Agency. There's a defect within our schools, and the truth of the matter is that it's absolutely something that should be a task that the Inspector General of Intelligence takes. I describe this as saying State Security Agency is actually a threat to national security of this country itself. So we must start inward and be able to then therefore be able to fix the system from within. Because what's the point of the State Security Agency that's dysfunctional? Because then they will not be able, or they don't have the appetite to look at the threats from outside if they can't fix their own house. So they need to fix their own house, and the Inspector General of Intelligence should ensure that that's the first thing that sort of happens. And that's the duty of the presidency as well, to implement all the recommendations that have been made by the different panels that have been established, and including the recommendations that were made by the State Capture Commission. So to have a thoroughly functioning state security agency, and one that is accountable. I'm hoping the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence also will pick up its socks, because not only is the Inspector General of Intelligence important, but JSCI is equally important. So there's three main players here. The presidency has to make sure that SSA is reformed and is implementing all the recommendations that are required to turn around that body. Secondly, the Inspector General of Intelligence should be independent and be able to rigorously hold them accountable. Right. And the JSCI should play their oversight role in Parliament to ensure that the State Security Agency is accountable. That's the only way we're going to have a fully functional State Security Agency, free of political influence and interference.
Imtiaz Fazel will only be in office for 5 years, right? Is South Africa on the right course, do you think, Thami, as far as building an intelligence service in this country and protection mechanisms that will outlast the incumbents and be able to withstand any sort of pressure 5, 10 years down the line when perhaps different people are in political office?
This is an acid test. To be able to implement all the recommendations as per high-level panel review, as we're able to implement all the recommendations as per the State Capture Commission, I think this would lay a foundation to at least having a much more effective state security agency. I have a bit of faith to simply say, if we get all these things right, and we get the independence right of the IGI, and we get accountability right, in truth, I think the incumbent would lay the foundation for a much more transparent, because you remember Sigmund Kumari speaking about undue secrecy of the State Security Agency. So we need a much more rigorous civilian oversight of the State Security Agency, and this is the time to lay the foundation. So if the president is talking, then he should put his money where his mouth is and ensure that this process actually sort of happens. So let's use this process to rebuild the agency, to give credibility to the agency, to ensure that we lay a foundation for the next coming years to essentially have a much more effective, much more accountable, much more transparent state security agency.
But how much resistance do you think there'll be from within to any attempts to rebuild the intelligence services?
There absolutely will be. Some elements of it is still, some of the rotten elements are still within the state security agency. Some of the illegal, authorization of the special operations unit that was implemented by Thulani Dhlomo back then. Some of those elements still remain within the state security agency. So the truth of the matter is that it's going to be a mammoth task even to implement the reforms as per all the recommendations that have been given to us by the different panels. It will be very difficult because some of the elements are still within there. So there will be some pushback. And obviously there will be some political, influence that sort of happens in that space. But for me, the biggest thing would be if the portfolio committee, plays its role, and the Inspector General plays its role to ensure that we monitor the implementations of the reforms that are necessary there, to ensure that we hold people accountable, and to ensure that the transparency coming out of there. I think that would at least enable us to have a sense to simply say we can get rid of the bad elements and the bad apples that still continue to exist within that agency. It was hollowed out. And this is a rebuilding phase. And in the rebuilding phase, there will be some horses that are dying kicking and not necessarily wanting to leave the agency. But that's the work that has to be done. And I think we need steadfast leadership in there, starting with the DG and starting with the heads of both the foreign and local heads, as well as the IGI and the presidency, given that the ministry is now stationed within the presidency, to ensure that all these things are actually done. So it's going to be a mammoth task, but not one that cannot necessarily be achieved.
Thami Nkosi, independent intelligence analyst. Good to speak to you, sir. Thank you.